On today's episode of the Gripe Session, we are going to tackle a topic that I'm finding a lot of my colleagues are doing nowadays, but they're not doing it, quite frankly, the right way. Check it out.
It's Gripe Session time with your host, George Wanaka.
It's about nothing.
Discussing everything from real estate, current events, a little bit of everything, and the annoying little things that just tick you off.
You can't handle the truth.
What? You didn't know?
Here's your host, George Wanaka.
Your ass better call somebody.
What's up, everybody? How we doing today? Welcome to today's edition of the Gripe Session. My name is George Wanaka. I will be your host for today's festivities, if you will. And I like to call them festivities because, again, here at the podcast, we like to have some fun. Granted, sometimes at other people's expenses and sometimes at our own, but needless to say, that's what we do here. Anyway, for those of you that do not know me, I have my own personal website known as searchstatinisland.com. I am a licensed and certified residential real estate appraiser, as well as being an associate real estate broker, as well as being a mortgage broker as well. And I'm also an instructor as well. So if you thought I didn't do a lot of stuff, you would be wrong. But that being said, I also coach and I give back to my communities. Now, today's topic is not about me, but in some aspects, I'm finding a lot of my colleagues doing this social media stuff and quite frankly, not necessarily doing it correctly, if you will. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. Well, one of the things that everybody talks about when you come into the business or business world, the new thing is you want to get as much eyes on your product as humanly possible. And that's great, right? You know, it's what we want to talk to our clients about. It's what we want to talk to our future clients and consumers and people looking at our product, whether it be real estate, whether it be mortgages, whether it be whatever. You might not even be in the real estate business. And that's okay. But the problem is what most people are dealing with at this time is an overabundance of look at this, look at that. And what I mean by that is, obviously in the real estate industry, there is a lot of people saying, oh, well, I just got this listing and I just sold that listing and I just did this and I just did that, right? And that is probably one of the worst pieces of advice that somebody could ever give another person in this business. I'll go into it a little bit further. Most of your time that you're going to spend, if you're going to spend any time on social media, and one of the things that Gary Vee always talks about, and some of my friends that are into social media, like Dustin and Chelsea, why they're so successful in what they do. And I'm sorry, before I'd say Dustin and Chelsea, like you've heard me before and you know who these people are. Dustin Brome, who has the Massive Agent podcast, Chelsea Pites, who has another podcast, and she has her books out, and Chelsea's really killing it right now. Her podcast name is The Voice of Social Sales. Now, if you listen to any of these people, and obviously, of course, the incomparable Gary Vee, is people want to know who you are, right? And if they don't know who they're dealing with or what you're all about or your personality or the fact that you coach your kids or you coach, maybe you don't coach your kids, you coach other people's kids. They want to see who you are. And those are the people that they want to do business with. You know, one of the things that a lot of people I always see around the holidays is shop local, right? You know, the local chain is not sponsoring your kids' little league or your kids' basketball league or any of those types of things. And quite frankly, that's accurate. But the thing that people keep missing is you have to be able to provide them with some value, right? In order for them to want to deal with you. If you're not providing any value to your consumer and your client, you going on social media and spewing about your new listing, or rates are now at this level, or, call me today for this, that, or the other thing, they're going to look at you just as a salesperson. And quite frankly, not to quote a NAR new public relations campaign, but that's not who we are. Some of us, yes, that's who we are. But the thing that most people are, or what we and my colleagues are having a very difficult time doing, which boggles my mind nowadays, mind you, is telling our own story. And earlier in this podcast, I started to talk about what exactly are you putting out there for people? Is all of your social media listings, things you just sold, oh, this person said I did a wonderful job for them, and that's it? I mean, that's not really providing any value for anybody. And, some people say, well, George, what's value? What kind of value are you talking about? Well, if you're in a specific area, become an expert in that area. Know what's going on this weekend for people to do. Post that, Post that, you're out there with the kids and you're having a good time, or you're at this event or you're at that event. That's the kind of stuff that people want to see, that know that you have your pulse on what's going on within your community and what exactly you're there for. You're there to be a resource and a value. And look, some people have the mindset of, well, if I do that, George, and they see who I really am, they might not want to deal with me. And my response to that, quite frankly, is, and explain to me why that's a bad thing. And for some people, that doesn't make any sense. Ow, that was my watch. That hurt. I banged my watch on the desk. But these are some of the things that go on in podcasts, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, and by the way, that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. See, this podcast, my Gripe session Facebook Lives that I do, if you don't follow me on Facebook, again, you can follow me there. They're all about being real. And that's what people want to see. I've talked about it in a previous podcast. People want real stuff. So when you continuously put out fake things, or things just pumping up, oh, look at me. If you looked at my Facebook page, including my business page, you'd be very hard pressed to find pretty much any local listings that I have. And it's not because I don't have listings. It's because I don't use it for that. Right? I use it to be a resource. And in some cases, things get in the way and I can't post as much as I want to. And I've done a little bit more Instagram stuff recently than I've, kind of devoted to other sections. But again, at the end of the day, you want to be a trusted resource for people, and continuously spewing listings and just information that essentially pumps me up or pumps you up, let me rephrase, is not what anybody really wants to see. So if it's not what anybody really wants to see, then as the expression goes, why in the hell are you posting it? It just, I don't get it. Now, I'm not sure if it could be a couple things. It could be some of these people took a class from somebody and they said, do this, and that's what they're doing. Now, I would also caution those who take some of these classes to do their research. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. I recently spoke to a couple of agents, and they listened to the podcast, and they said, George, I listened to the podcast, and you were talking about this topic, which I think the topic had to do with professional photos or something along those lines. And I said, yeah, not a lot of people agree with that, and that's fine. Everybody's got entitled to their opinion. But what's the question? And they said, well, the question was more from somebody we listened to, and they said, well, that kind of information is not going to get you a positive on social media, because people want to see really nice stuff on those, platforms. And I said, okay, I said, let me ask you the better question to all of this. And they said, go ahead. And I said, did your instructor have a social media page? And the response was, I'm not really too sure. And they said, well, what difference does it make? And I said, well, here's the thing. If in 1 minute they're going to talk about social media, and in the next minute they're going to say, this is why they're right. And that's fine. Okay. See, this is what happens. Like, Dustin has the squirrel, and I have people sending me text messages in the middle of the Gripe Session podcast. This is tremendous. But anyway, this is real. This is what we do. So my response was, go check and see how many follows that this individual has, or how many posts did this individual have. And then we'll have a serious conversation about social media. Sounds like a plan, right? So proceeds, they call me back within 20 minutes, and they're laughing. And I, quite frankly, say, what's so funny? And they say, well, I went, like you said, I went and checked their social media. I checked this social media and that social media, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, okay, and what happened? And they said, you have more followers on one of your accounts than they have combined on 3. Now, that's really not that big of a deal, with one exception. How can you teach about social media and correct strategies when you buy your followers, or quite frankly, you don't have enough of them to begin with? That just doesn't make any sense. And you would think that people would look into it and get it. But the problem is that, unfortunately, we live in an age of people will just say, okay, I'm going to do this and go from there, and don't go out there to research what's actually going on. So we've kind of been a little bit all over the place today on this podcast, but the best thing that I would want to, the best kind of advice I'd like to give to agents is very simple. These platforms are free right now. The more people that get to know you, like you, trust you, the more individuals that you're going to get that want to deal directly with you. There's no advertising that needs to be done. That's a whole nother section. But you don't want to be able to post things that are going to just make you look like the typical salesperson. The reason I wanted to hit this topic today, quite frankly, is because I've noticed ever since the new year came, my feed has been inundated with nothing more than, oh, look at me, I got a new listing. Oh my God, I just sold this amount of house. So happy for my clients. Blah, 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 blah. Really? Who do you think cares about any of that? If you're looking to buy or sell, please call me. No. You know when they're going to call you? They're going to call you when they see the things that you're doing. They're going to call you when they see that you're commenting on stuff. The problem is, again, most of our colleagues, or most of my colleagues, some of us are actually starting to do it. And it's my hope and prayer that it catches on. So if you follow me on social medias, on Instagram, George S. Wanaka, on Facebook, what the heck else am I on? I'm TikTok, LinkedIn, etc., etc. I'm actually telling you, you are welcome to troll me. Okay? And you can copy me too if you want. Start telling people a day in the life. Start telling people about what you do as a real estate professional. Now, the problem is this is going to take some work for some of you, okay? Because you don't like how you look, and I don't like a video, but that's why we have these things called stories, right? Put them in stories. The more people that watches, the better off people are going to know who you are. The more they're going to want to potentially deal with you or not deal with you. Oh, and by the way, that's okay if they don't want to deal with you, because you might not want to deal with them, because for as much as a pain that you think that you might be, they might be the other pain that you don't want to deal with anyway. So that being said, I wanted to definitely throw this one out there today, only because, again, after the first of the year comes and everybody has these wonderful goals that they want to set for themselves for the course of 2020. And while I'm all about goal setting and I am all about getting your word out there and getting your information out there, you got to be able to do it right in order to generate anything whatsoever. So that's what I want to leave you all with today. Well, that is all the time we have for today's Gripe session. I hope you enjoyed it today. If you found it something valuable on here today, or if you didn't like it at all, listen, tell somebody about it. Tell them you got to listen to some of the stuff this guy's coming out with. Some of it's right, some of it's wrong, some of it's indifferent. I don't care if you like it. I don't care if you dislike it. Guess what? As long as you're listening, that's the most important thing. But anyway, I digress. If you found some value in this podcast today, I would really appreciate if you went to the subscribe button and you subscribe to this podcast. Not only that, if you could give me a rate and a review. And one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to start giving some shout outs, if you will, on people that have rated and reviewed this podcast. So on the next episode of the Gripe session, I'm going to read one of somebody that had rated and reviewed and took time, a couple minutes, to go on to their iTunes, or it's not called iTunes anymore, but their podcast link, and went on there and hit a podcast review for the Gripe Session podcast. And I'm going to shout you out on the podcast. So if you haven't done it yet, please feel free to go and do that, because guess what? You might be shouted out on next week's edition of the Gripe Session. So that being said, I hope you all have a super fantastic day. Remember, go do something nice for somebody that you wouldn't normally do, and we'll catch you on the next edition of the Gripe Session. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Gripe Session. Please follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.